Good morning. Welcome to Nashville, Tennessee, Music City. Woo, woo. We are so honored here at Fleet Feet Nashville to be partnering with Asics on the Move Her Mind tour. And we are so lucky to share this morning with you all and to have two celebrities in our midst, the Megans, as they're often referred to. These women are phenomenal women. We had a chance to host them last year, again with Asics, and they say never to meet your heroes because you'll be disappointed. Completely untrue with these two women because they are every bit of genuine and smart and funny as they appear to be on their social media channels and on their podcast. So we're so lucky to have them here this morning. So I'm going to turn it over to the Megans, and we're going to be talking about women's safety and movement this morning. I think it's a very important conversation. It might be a very heavy conversation at some points, but the best way to have those conversations is in a safe space and in a community like what we've created here. So thank you so much for honoring us with your presence this morning. So, dear Megans, take it away.
Thanks, CV. I was joking with Megan earlier that we need to bring you everywhere as our ultimate hype woman, so please come on any of those stops with us. This is actually Megan's and my third stop here in Nashville, and it's our favorite stop, and partially because of CB and the whole team here, which is amazing, but also because of all of you guys. Like, it's the most warm welcome we ever get, so thank you all for that. I am the Megan with Believe in the Run, the co-host of the Move Her Mind event series with the other co-host, Megan.
And I am Megan Featherston with Featherstone Nutrition, the other co-host. So the Megs are traveling. This is our fourth stop on the Move Her Mind tour. Each of these stops is dedicated to tackling a different aspect of running, and we're really trying to piggyback off of a study that was commissioned by Asics a couple years ago, looking at the gender gap in movement. And of course, we found that women aren't moving quite as much as they want to. So our mission is at each stop to tackle a piece of maybe what's holding some women back from movement. We always like to say the group in front of us is probably very active. So some of the things that you're learning here, we hope that you guys will help be good stewards of helping other women move and get other women in your lives moving and, encourage them to kind of overcome some of the barriers they have. So today we have two very special guests with us that are going to talk to us a little bit more about the safety aspects of running, both from a health standpoint and a physical standpoint. So we have Lolita here, and we have Abby. We're going to let them introduce themselves a little bit. So Lolita, I'll let you start.
Sure. My name is Lolita Bryant, and I am excited to be here to speak with you all about women's health.
My name is Alyssa Lokits, and I am here on behalf of my sister-in-law, Alyssa Lokits, and Free to Move.
All right, so yeah, thank you both for being here. I love to start with sort of your running journey and where that began for both of you. So Lolita, if you want to talk to us about when did you find running?
Sure. I started running in 2003. I went out to the Rock and Roll half marathon to witness my oldest daughter run, and I thought, I am going to run one half marathon next year, and that's going to be it. And been running ever since. And then after that, I discovered an amazing women's run group, Black Girls Run, and that's where my journey began. And just one quick shout out to Fleet Feet, because I remember my first run, I had no idea what to wear and what I was doing. And after that run, I came for my very first fitting at this store when it was nowhere near as big as it is now. But I got fitted, and I've been getting fitted for my gear and shoes here ever since.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I started running in college, not for college, but just in college. I just was wanting to find something to get myself outside and more active, something to help with my mental health. and physical health, and just fell in love with it. And it's been over a decade now, and now I'm a full-blown runner gal. So.
I love that. That's awesome, Abby. Tell us a little bit about your nonprofit, Free to Move.
Absolutely. So many in the Nashville community know about my sister-in-law, Alyssa Lokits, who 7 months ago went out for a run on the Mill Creek Greenway and was attacked and killed. She was the most remarkable woman I've ever known, the strongest woman I've ever known, the most prepared and vigilant woman I have ever known. But despite all of these things, she was killed. And in the wake of her passing, Alyssa's friends and family really felt called to channel our grief into something purposeful and impactful. And it was really kind of one of those middle of the night, grief-stricken moments when I turned to my husband and I said, we have to do something. Not only to honor Alyssa, but to protect future women from this happening to them. So that's how Free to Move was born. We are an official nonprofit as of 5 months ago, but already the support has just been absolutely amazing. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And we're going to dive a lot more into that and lean in on some of the things that you've learned and you can share with all of us throughout our chat today. So Lolita, you had a little bit of a traumatic experience during one of your runs. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure.
Take your time. Yeah.
I swore I would not do this. On April the 17th of 2023, I went out for one of my normal runs. It was going to be a 4-mile run. I felt fabulous. And I went out for a run, and on my way back, I probably had maybe a half of a mile to go. I mean a split second, I started having left jaw pain, left arm pain that radiated to my back, and I'm a cardiac nurse, so I knew what was happening to me, but I could not believe what was happening to me. I was, like I just said, less than a half a mile from the emergency room. Some people ask me why I didn't call 911, or I know that time is muscle. And I knew if I stopped for 1 second, I would have died. 1 second, I knew it, I was dying, I felt it. And I got to the emergency room, I got the help that I needed. Thank God all the right providers were in place. I had blockage to two of my major arteries. The artery that fed the back of my heart was blocked 90%. The artery that fed the front of my heart was blocked 70%. And I had an emergency stent for one of my arteries. I was rested for 2 weeks, and then I was brought back to the hospital to have a stent placed in my other artery.
That's incredible that you knew what to do and that you happened to be so close to someone who could help you and be able to act on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank God for it.
Yeah.
So Lolita, can you tell us a little bit about sort of immediately after that, and then how you've gotten to where you are now, where we're out on a group run together?
Yes. So immediately after that, of course, shock. Every person that came to visit me was like, "You are the healthiest person I know. I should be in that bed and not you." And I would just like to say, what happens to us when we do everything that we think we're doing right? And that's how I felt. So immediately after that starts the journey, the transition, which for me, I was kind of still in shock. Like, I just could not believe that happened to me. I then gradually started to get back into running. And there was fear behind it. There was anxiety behind it. There was a lot of emotions behind it. And I can just remember that I thought, wow, my arteries were blocked. And I just started to run fast, like a 10-minute mile was fast for me. So I just started to run fast. And I thought, my arteries are clear. So I'm going to go out to this greenway and I'm going to burn it up. Like, I got out of my car, y'all, I got out of my car and 0.10 mile, not 10 miles, 0.10 into my run, I was totally exhausted. And that's when I cried. And I experienced at that point, to me, was frustration. So all the emotions that come behind that, some of it was frustration. I never got angry. And part of that was I wanted to experience it alone. I wanted to experience all of my emotions alone initially because I wanted to work my way through it and I wanted to process it. I wanted to experience and process it and then talk to someone about it. I didn't want to experience it and then someone is trying to be supportive would tell me how to feel. That was very important to me. The journey continued, and I just got stronger. I had a very good support system, my providers. My cardiologist would always just encourage me and tell me that I was one of the healthiest people that he knew. I was told that if I wasn't as healthy as I would have died that day. He would just continue, his voice would be there with me. So I would just remember him saying, take your time, you got this. And some days on the Greenway, y'all, I'm surprised they didn't call Smyrna Police Department or the Park Patrol. I would cry. But I had a really good therapist about 20 years ago, and she told me, as long as you know why you're crying, cry. So every time I cried, I knew why I was crying, because I would put that emotion with it. And so it was just the process. And part of that process was dealing with my whole self, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of that. And that's where the healing began.
Thank you for sharing that. I think you two are such great examples of a very large event that has left us feeling a certain way about our running. And I think we can all in this room relate to the fact that we use running for a lot of different things in our life. So all of a sudden, when running brings some anxiety, brings some fear, brings up these emotions, it can be really hard to figure that out. So Abby, I want to hear a little more about your experience as you were coming back to running after losing your sister-in-law, and kind of how that felt and how you dealt with that, and anything that might have been helpful for you, as Lolita shared with counseling. And
So Alyssa and I bonded on all things health and wellness. She was like the healthiest person. I mean, vegan, like marathon runner, yogi. She meditated every day. She was always telling me I needed to start meditating because I don't have any chill. But anyway, we always bonded over that aspect of our identities, of being very healthy, very active individuals. And when Alyssa was killed, part of my identity was also taken. And so that's been really hard to try to gain back. But 4 days after she was killed, I told my husband, I have to go. Like, I have to go run. I can't not run. I can't. So it was like 2 or 3 of my brother-in-laws. We just ran a 5K. And they ran behind me like 10 or 20 feet and just let me just bomb it. Like, it was the fastest I've ever done a 5K. Just because I needed to be able to know I could still do it. And that kind of was the catalyst for me just continually telling myself anytime I had doubt, no, go, like you have to get back out there. And so a week later, the day I got back to Denver from being in Nashville from the funeral, I went to the park and I sat in my car and I cried. And I was at a heavily populated park, Sloan's Lake. I don't know if you all know that in the Denver area. There was people everywhere, and still just could barely get myself out of the car, but I did it. And then I regressed. I think that's really important to know, that it's really okay to not be okay. It's okay to do things that make you feel safe where you're at when you need that. Because for 2 months after that, I did not run again outside. And I will always say, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be this really strong, confident person, because I'm not. But I do know that despite not being okay and still grieving heavily, I can't let that part of my identity die. So I just recently started trail running again, which is one of my loves out in Colorado. And I'm finding my power again, and I'm finding my confidence again and my strength again. And so now I'm at the point where I'm running 3 to 5 times a week by myself outside again. And anytime I feel anxious, as we talked about in our meeting last week, learning to separate what is anxiety and what is fear, because there's a difference. And 99.9% of the time for myself, it's anxiety, it's not fear. And learning how to delineate between those two has been really, really important for my healing process. And just knowing too, I think about her every second of every day, but especially when I run, I think about her and I just, I know she's with me. And that in itself is very empowering, knowing that she's right there with me every step. So it's a process. It's very much back and forth, which is something that I, with my own therapist, love therapy. It's great. Have had to really recognize that there's no timeline for this. I remember just a few weeks after everything happened, I went to her and I said, okay, what's my timeline for getting through this? Like, I need to know how long this is gonna take, because it is absolutely unbearable. Not just the grief, but the trauma associated with the grief. Those are two different things, which I've also learned. And she said, Abby, you can't put a time on it. Like, and settling into that, the ownership of that has been really, really good for me personally, because that just means I just have to readjust my entire way of thinking now, rather than just waiting for this end of date. So.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I know it's hard, but we really appreciate it. You mentioned being able to delineate between anxiety and fear, and I'd love if maybe you could talk to us a little bit deeper about that for someone who maybe is feeling anxious or fearful about going out for a run, and how do you make those findings yourself?
So the way I think about it is, fear is when there's an imminent danger. Anxiety is what's up in here, right up in your mind. And for me, being constantly aware of my surroundings and my environment, scanning is really, really big for me. It makes me feel very safe, is constantly scanning. Helps me check myself personally when I'm running of, there are no imminent dangers here. There is no imminent danger. This is just anxiety. And that helps kind of lower my stress cortisol levels. It doesn't always work. I'm still learning how to pass people on the trail without like absolutely freaking out. But I think it's just a process, right, of constantly checking in with yourself. That's one thing that we really want to address with the organization is how much internal navigation goes into safety, because there is no one size fits all approach for safety. Everything is, safety is going to look different for every single one of us in this room. So to be able to internally recognize what feels safe for me and then readjust those, like that compass of anxiety and fear. Did that answer your question? Yep. Okay.
So, Lolita, you talked about coming back a bit, and I'm sure there had to have been some anxiety or fears around just getting started again. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, excuse me. It feels the same. For me, I had to distinguish between fear and anxiety as well. I was talking to some of the ladies that I was walking with today, and I was telling them, sometimes we talk about the fear of the unknown. For me, it was the fear of the known. Sure. So when I started to run again, and I have 3 things that I check now, because I'm like, okay, Lolita, is this fear or are you creating a sense of anxiety for yourself? So when I run, I check in with myself and I am like, is your jaw hurting? Is your arm hurting? Are you having pain in your back? No. You are creating anxiety right now because of what happened, the trauma. So with that, I have a mantra, and my mantra is breathe. And I'm like, okay, Lolita, breathe. Reset, pull back if you need to, slow down if you need to, and walk if you need to. But you're not having a heart attack. You're not having any of the symptoms. So fear and anxiety, the fear of the known and the anxiety is what I create sometimes. But I have a process to work through for myself.
I think it's absolutely incredible. You two have gone through so much grief and trauma related to running, yet neither of them stopped running, right? They figured out a way to make this work. They are using running as a way to cope, to heal, to do better in this world, to educate. I mean, I think I don't need to tell anybody in this room how incredible running can be in all of our lives, but these two are just such a phenomenal example of how to go through really hard times directly related to our running and to bounce back as even stronger women. So, cannot applaud you both enough for that, without a doubt. But I am curious a little bit, specifically for you, Abby. I guess I work a lot with one-on-one with women, and I hear a lot of fear and anxiety around running alone, and then we hear these traumatic stories like what happened to Alyssa, and it just continues to perpetuate these fears with women runners. And I personally get DMs all the time, how do you possibly run alone? Like, how do you feel safe alone? So with the work that you are doing with Free to Move, what would you tell people that do have probably more anxiety, maybe some fear, right, around running alone as a female, and what have you kind of found through your organization or some empowering pieces of wisdom to give to these folks who might be thinking this?
Absolutely. Well, like I said earlier, there is no one size fits all approach to safety. So I feel like it would not be helpful for me to give, a list of solutions, because what works for me in Denver, Colorado is not necessarily going to work for you in Nashville or Ohio or wherever you're from. I think I know for myself, I need to take ownership over my space in the outdoors. That is something that is so important to who I am as a person that I don't give myself a choice to not do it. That doesn't necessarily help someone else who doesn't feel safe to go outside. And I think that it's really essential that we tell women, even if it isn't outside, even if it's on a treadmill, or even if it's in your basement doing body squats or walking laps around your couch, just moving your body in a way that makes you feel good is what you should do for yourself. You should never do something that you don't feel safe doing. I think that pushing yourself to the point where you are, not in a good place emotionally is, I do that all the time, actually. I shouldn't say that. Like, what am I saying? But I think collectively, the more we take ownership over this space outside, the more we will empower each other. There is so much fear-mongering in this world through so many outlets. And I think getting outside together, getting outside and sharing your experiences outside, sharing when you do feel empowered, sharing when you feel afraid but you still do it, are all ways to just lift each other up. We were saying when we chatted on the run earlier that there's so many well-intentioned solutions, I say that in quotations, that people promote that are really just barriers to accessibility for women. And that's not going to be the solution to a systemic issue. That is just a symptom over a gaping wound. It's like slapping a Band-Aid on, I really do believe that it is through the power of community and the power of unity that women will feel safer. It's through lifting each other up and not making people feel afraid.
Mm-hmm. And Free to Move is obviously this incredible resource, and it's amazing that you're helping all these people. And so I'm curious for you, Lolita, going through what you did. Obviously, there was doctors, and you even mentioned your therapist. But are there resources that you use to help you get through everything and to where you are today? Or are there resources that you would recommend to people who might be going through some sort of trauma?
Yes. First of all, I would like to just give a couple of statistics. Heart disease is the #1 killer for people in the United States. That's the first thing. Over 800,000 people have died, like in 2022, that was a statistic, from heart disease. So heart disease is the #1 killer of women in the United States. With saying that, my support system, and I would just say every person in here, embrace your support systems, whether it be your therapist, your run groups, your spouse, your family, your community. That's what helped me. That's one of my resources. That's one of my resources. The second resource that I would like to mention is there is a non-invasive CT scan that you may or may not need an order from your physician, and that scan will assess the amount of calcium that's in your arteries. Another resource that's local, Ascension Health Hospital, they actually have a women's heart group, focuses on women with heart disease. They have a diverse group of physicians in that program. Other resources are resources that are researched in online, American Heart Association, the CDC, the National Institute of Health. So I would reach out, to those resources. Another thing that I would just like to mention quickly is know the symptoms of heart disease. Know that women and men have different symptoms sometimes. They're not always typical. And for women, a lot of times we don't get the chest pain, we get the back pain. I had every single symptom, typical women's symptom. But normally it's chest pain, back pain, jaw pain, left arm pain, pain that radiates down your arm. And it's an unbelievable pain. Another symptom for women is sometimes we ignore some of our symptoms, the bloating, shortness of breath, being really tired all the time. Some menopause and perimenopause symptoms mimic heart disease. So I know that sometimes we joke about menopause and perimenopause, but ladies, please take it seriously. When you go to your provider, let them know that you're having these type of symptoms. They're mimicking menopause, but they may not be menopause. It may be your first signs and symptoms of heart disease. Sweating, that's menopause, but it's also a sign and symptom of heart disease. If you have had your menstrual cycle before the age of 11, that is another risk factor for heart disease. Of course, family history of hypertension, diabetes, and of course, if you've had heart disease in your family, those are signs and symptoms. So I just wanted to make sure that I was able to put that out there.
Definitely. Yeah, that's super helpful. And, coming from a clinical dietitian background, I'm always like, yearly wellness checks, go get your labs done, know your genetic history, know what your baseline is, have an established healthcare team, so that when something comes up, because inevitably something's going to come up for most of us in here, we've got that team behind us ready to help us through it before, hopefully it turns into something super scary. So, yeah, definitely. Abby, I'm curious, as far as some of the barriers that you have seen to women in safety running alone, running outside, do you have any thoughts on or tips for people that are listening to get over some of those barriers?
I could go on about the barriers. They make me so
that
mad.
might be helpful too. That might be a great one, yeah.
Well, I'll touch on those first because I think it's important to note we have been very hesitant to endorse any self-defense classes or safety products or anything without really truly doing the research into how they go about marketing those products, selling those products, because so often fear is the way they want to get you to buy their stuff. And that shouldn't be the way to get someone outside. It feels very icky. Alyssa had trained for years in self-defense. She was did the whole Krav Maga. She had 6 brothers and could take on any single one of her brothers. I'm married to one of her brothers, actually. And it still wasn't enough. And that is something that I struggle with every day. And so when people try to market one-off self-defense classes as the fix-it to how to be safe, it's really not, unless you are training, even if you are training consistently, even if you train with a weapon consistently, a lot of those mechanisms really just place you in a fear mindset and a defense mindset rather than empowered and confident. And I just hesitate also because as a former librarian, equity of access is extremely important to me and to everything I do. And starting this organization, I had told the other founders, I want what we do to be truly accessible to everyone. And self-defense classes are not cheap. Safety tools are not cheap. Self-defense classes are offered not frequently enough for people to be able to access them if they are free. On top of putting you into this defense mindset. I was told by a city employee, I won't name any names, but that women should just stop running at night. That should be the fix. His response was stop running at night and just offer more self-defense classes. That's what he told me when I asked what we needed to do to advocate for changes in Nashville. And those alone are barriers, right? Sometimes the only time you have to run is at night, right? So to just cut that time out of your day because it's just not safe, rather than looking at the issue from a systemic, like, overarching standpoint. I'm Italian, I talk with my hands a lot, sorry. Is just very short-sighted. I think, telling women to just run with a knife every day is short-sighted. I think there's a lot more comprehensive change that can be made, across the board, from infrastructure improvements on the municipality side to more inclusive access to resources on the running industry side, to more community education from the nonprofit side. I mean, there are so many ways that we can eliminate those barriers without having to put a knife or a can of mace into a woman's hands. I don't want to carry mace. I run all the time, and I don't want to have to do that. Like, I think there are so many ways that you can feel safe, be safe, without having to, carry a weapon or pay for a $300 a month self-defense class.
Yeah, I totally get that. If anybody follows along, I run in the dark in the morning, alone most of the time. So absolutely love what you were doing. And
I do have to say, though, I have been introduced to all the run clubs here in Nashville and have to give a huge shout out to all of them. They are incredible. Fleet Feet has an amazing community of run clubs out here that I've had the privilege of meeting over the last few months. So if you are one who enjoys running in groups, there's always, that is a proven statistic, safety in numbers. So if you don't feel comfortable running alone, there has to be like dozens of run clubs in Nashville. I'm looking out to the Fleet Feet people. It's incredible, and they're so welcoming. I've done a few runs with them over the last few months, and they're great. So,
yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, you guys do have just the best running community. That's probably why we love coming here so much. You guys are just all amazing. Yeah, absolutely. So we've learned a lot about Free to Move today, and I just want to speak for all of us. Sorry if you don't agree, but we are here to support you. Anything we can do to help support you and your nonprofit, I think I see lots of heads nodding. We're all very passionate about, anything that any of us can do. Please, we'll all follow along and here to help. Yeah.
So I guess just a couple final questions here. Well, actually, Abby, you brought up something earlier that I wanted to go back to. You said you had this regression period, and I'm wondering for someone who maybe, I think if you have some initial success, okay, I'm getting better, this is getting easier, I'm doing well, and then you have this regression period, I think that can almost be harder. How did you get back on the other side of that? And what would you tell someone who maybe is feeling in that sort of position?
I had a regression period 3 days ago, so they still happen. The big thing that I have leaned on is our incredible community. Being with people who hear you, not just listen, but who really hear you through times of intense grief and trauma, is just essential in getting through those regressive periods. And then also on top of that, having that accountability and that community, but finding other ways to make it work. Because being active is just so key to my mental health. I know that if I don't work out, I'm going to feel like a pile of poop. So I just keep doing it, which is what I did through those couple of months, whether it was like YouTube videos on my phone, doing, body weight workouts or whatever. Just finding any way to make myself move, because movement is just so key to working through trauma and grief, and all of the unsavory, depression and anxiety that come with all of that. So I think just finding any way that you can continue doing what you're doing during that time. And then eventually you do come out of it. You do. I mean, I can attest to that. It just sucks really bad. Yeah.
So, Lolita, if there was one thing or maybe a few things that you would want to leave this group here with, and whoever's listening to this podcast at home through your experience, what would those things be?
It would be listen to your body, know the signs and symptoms of heart disease, know the risk factors of heart disease, know the resources, and also embrace your tribe. For me, that has been so helpful. When I have those days, the regression, the fear, the anxiety, I embrace my tribe. I just want to say that something that's been so helpful for me, and I would encourage anyone, whether it was a heart attack or you fell, whatever happened to you while you were working out or doing something that you loved, it's trauma. And it's a time that you have to work through to get back to where your baseline and what you love to do. Embrace your tribe. There's a group that I and two of my friends started in 2021, and we meet every single Monday, whether or not we meet in person or we meet virtually. And we coined ourselves the Consistency Crew. And we celebrate each other no matter what, ups, downs, all of that. And they have helped me so much to work through this process. So not only professionally, embrace the people that have supported you and that are around you. And one last thing is because I believe in therapy, and I went to therapy after my heart attack because I had so many emotions to deal with. If you have a benefit at your job, EAP is call it some places. At my workplace, my employer, I get 6 free visits, and I used every last one of them. So I encourage therapy, talking to somebody professionally. So that's what I would like to leave people with.
Yeah, and then for Abby, I want 2 parts to leave everybody with. One would be, what can we do, both as men and women listening, to help support you and support your mission here, but then also just any tips that you have learned to leave everybody with to help people feel a little more safe outside.
I'll start with the tips because I'm terrible about asking for support. So trust yourself. That is something that we actually were in production all day yesterday filming our first video resource library of safety strategies that we will be launching this summer, addressing I won't talk forever, but addressing the 3 main pillars of safety that we want women to know. The neurophysiological strategies for safety, the proactive strategies for safety, and then reactive strategies. And one of the things we talk about so much is trusting yourself. Your intuition is a very, very powerful thing. And like we talked about earlier, learning how to navigate that internal compass between anxiety and fear, between, an attack or potential danger and the unknown, right? Learning how to navigate that and trust yourself is just so empowering. Because we are really incredible beings. Women are really awesome. And we know what to do. Alyssa knew what to do. She did everything she needed to do. And And that's something that I just want people to know. She did everything right. And it just shows just how powerful we are as women, even when the outcome is awful and tragic, that we know. So trust yourself, trust your body. I got lost. I lost track there. And do what makes you feel safe, whatever that looks like. That might be running with one of the many run clubs here. That might be, running around your couch, walking around your couch, doing YouTube videos. Do what makes you feel safe, but just keep moving. Just keep doing it, because the more we move, the more empowered we are. And then we will be empowering other people too. Because when people see other people move and other people that are confident, that builds other people's confidence. And as for support, just continue to share her story. Continue to say her name. That middle of the night, idea I had to my husband, was just initially just a plea for someone to say her name so that it won't get lost. And I believe that through this organization, her legacy will live on, and we will protect women. So just keep sharing her story, saying her name, and find us on our website too. Am I allowed to plug that? Okay. Yes. wearefreetomove.org. You can also find us on Instagram at wearefreetomove.
I can't thank you both enough for sharing your stories and empowering us all today. And so thank you so much.